Hi, and welcome to another great episode of Money Talk, where we not just talk about money, but we talk about how to get it. We talk about the mindset of getting it. And today, our mindset is going to be reset because this is our Valentine's Day special. Our Valentine's special is all about heart. And sometimes when we're talking about the heart, we talk about things that, well, maybe some people are not just so comfortable about. Maybe they're not comfortable talking about woo-woo or other things that may make you feel just slightly uncomfortable because you're talking about your emotions, you're talking about your feelings. Well, if you're a small business owner or you're a big business owner, you have to have two things to make your business successful. One of them is will. And in will, it's the willingness to get out of bed and go do the tough stuff, to go do the things that you have to do on a daily basis. If you're in a large organization, how do you motivate other people to want to do things? Because as it turns out, we all need resources, and money is one of those resources. And so when we're talking about money, if we lead from the heart, we're really oriented towards having other people help us or our willingness to help others. See here, try this out. I have run a company that we are really driven by being number one and having all of the money that we need to have to make our product and our services number one, and then the people that help us get there. See, it doesn't sound like it would be very motivating, right? I'm thinking about all the reasons why somebody wants to do something. See, I'm willing to help somebody if they acknowledge who I am, if they acknowledge my skill set or my brilliance, and I'll help you reach those goals. And so I'm willing to help the resources to get there, my resources. But when you're running a small business and you're really trying to attract other people that will help you do that and take that greatness to another level, sometimes it takes us a little bit of an adjustment, our mindset, our reset, our mindset, and coming from the heart, having that sensitivity of being able to reach other people. I'm just telling you, I've got the best expert on the planet today coming together with us. And I'm going to be introducing her in just a second. But some people have described her as a unicorn. The magic of being able to take her medical intuition and energy healing and be a heart-centered sales expert. A heart-centered, I know many people don't think that anybody that's in sales could be heart-centered, but turns out the magic of the combination of these brings us Ann Hession. Ann, please join us.
Hi.
Hello, and good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Glad to be here.
We're doing the heart session today because this is our Valentine's Day special. And I think that one of the most magical things that I think that you do is have the ability to be able to reach other people's energy, to really sensitively, I can't even say the word clearly. I don't have that sensitivity this morning. Being able to reach people in a way that they just feel. And there are a lot of people that just feel things. How is it that you're able to connect with them on a level that we just don't comprehend, we can't understand? It's an intuitive feeling. What is that about?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I do think of myself as being a very intuitive person, but I don't think I'm doing anything that anyone else can't do. I think we're all a lot more intuitive than we believe that we are. And the real key is it's really about learning to trust that intuition, learning to trust that sort of knowing and that kind of those gut feelings. So I don't really think that I'm necessarily all that special. I think the difference is that I have consciously put effort into learning to trust that intuition. Does that make sense when I put it that way?
I think that does make sense. And when I think about I'm trying to come back in. It's not letting me come back on camera. This is very interesting.
There we go. There you go.
Oh my goodness. Well, we've got gremlins in our system this morning, which is hilarious. So it does make sense to a certain degree. See, I don't tell people that I'm an intuitive, but I understand what you mean by that. Being a heart-centered salesperson is a whole different thing, isn't it?
I mean, it can be. I think that I mean, I could talk about sales and this stuff for hours, but I'll tell you, I think that there are very old and outdated sort of paradigms of sales out there that are still being taught that are fine if that's what works for you. First of all, I'll say
For
that.
instance, give me an example, Ann.
Well, I mean, you think sorry, think of any old movies about sales, and just like just the very like always be closing and overcome objections and da da da. There's
Right.
the traditional language of sales and the traditional, I'm going to say it's even sort of a subculture of sales in its own way, is very masculine. It's very masculine. Look at the language. Literally, what's in like
Totally.
every old timey thing? Overcome objections.
Right.
Overcome them? Like what?
We're
Right?
gonna
Do you know
make
what I
you
mean?
do
Like
it,
literally,
right?
it's right there in the language. How about listen to them, address them, resolve them? No, overcome them. Right? So, and I'm not like I love male energy. I have a lot of male energy myself. I'm not knocking male energy. It's just that there's different things are appropriate for different times in different situations and for different people. So for more kind of heart-centered kind of people who really like to, who are, more very value-driven and very, purpose-driven, that coming from that very uber kind of male energy as the place you're coming from and talking about connecting with people and offering to help them with your services, it just doesn't work. It's just not a fit, right? It's
No,
just
it
not.
would actually feel very toxic, wouldn't it?
Yes. Now, and again, in some industries, that old thing still works, and it's great. And if that works for you, great. But it certainly doesn't work for healers and coaches and the kind of people that I mostly work for, right?
Tell
So
me about
I
your
like.
tell me about your ideal audience, Ann. I'm sorry to
So
interrupt.
I am an energy healer, medical tech, got all the woo woo going on. I have that whole background, been doing stuff like that for like 40 years, and very experienced in sales and have millions in sales to my name. And the
Hold on, you just kind of glossed over that fact that you did $4 million in sales in this woo-woo space, and most people would never think that that's even possible, but that's just standard language for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, between my own business and the people that I help, and also I've done sales in that healing space for other people, like people that train and certified healers. And between all of that, yeah, I have done millions in sales, over 4 million in sales, and it's coming. It's really all about coming from. There's so much we put out on the table. Sorry, I'm trying to again. One of the things I would say is that doing sales the way that I like to do it and the way that I like to teach it is all about putting the relationship as being more important than the transaction. And if I'm going to describe heart-centered sales in a nutshell, that is how I describe it. It is that the relationship is more important than the transaction.
And that's exactly how I started this, introduction about willingness and then resources. To run a successful business, we have, there's two components to this, the willingness and the resources. Of course, money is just one of those resources, having the right energy and the other things. But the willingness is, in my opinion, and is the willingness for us to listen, the
Yep.
willingness for us to hear the other person, the willingness for us to reach out, from a space that isn't just, a big hug, but from a compassion and an understanding level. Would you agree with that?
100%. It's really is about, I like to think of it as like, look, you're just, sir, let's say you're in a sales conversation, right? You have something to sell, someone has expressed interest, and you are having that interaction with them. It is actually your job to, not to I'm going to say it's your job to serve them, which would include selling them something if that's what's going to serve them, right? And so it's not, as you said, just come in a big hug. It's not just about, I'm just going to be nice to them and I'm going to make them feel all warm and fuzzy. You're not really, you're not doing your job if you're only just doing that. But you're also not doing your job the way I see it if you're just like trying to make the sale and
Oh my
not
God.
actually connecting with them. So it's about finding out, why they showed up, asking questions, really getting clear about what it is that's going on with them. And if you have a solution, and we just not always the best fit for that person, right? If my solution is not the best fit for them, then I recommend something else, right? But when it is, then making that invitation. And so, but for me, it's always inside of that the relationship is more important than the transaction. And you
It
can
always is.
tell, we've all been in sales situations where you could tell that the salesperson was making the transaction more important than you.
And what are some of those hints?
Well, I think you typically don't feel listened to, right? You don't feel like they're just talking at you. They're not asking great questions to really
They're
figure
giving you
out
sound
what you
bites.
need. Yeah, it's like, it can almost feel kind of robotic. Or there's times when I love to watch other salespeople because I can, I can geek out about energy healing and I can also geek out about sales because they
I
both
can
fascinate
too.
me,
I
right?
love it.
So
I'm one
sometimes
of the few people that waits for those people to call me at 6
I
o'clock.
know, and then I'm like listening. I think I've been known to like be in a furniture store and just kind of listen in on like because that's a place where you can actually listen in on someone else's. And I'm like, oh, good, that was good. Oh, dude, no,
Oh,
no.
yeah, right. You were doing so well.
Exactly. But yeah, I think the things people feel, you'll feel manipulated, you'll feel pushed, in the online like transformation and information industry, coaches, healers to some degree, transformational programs, marketing, that whole space, right? So I'm inside of that space in the more woo-woo side of it, right? But I've run up against, I think anyone who's probably been to, big events and stuff have hopefully had great and wonderful experiences with salespeople, but also probably we've had some not so great ones where people will, they're selling this big course to help you with your business. And, and then when you're saying no, they're like, oh, so what you're saying is you're not committed to your business.
Oh, yes. I
Like
just
crap like
love
that, right? Like, oh, because I don't want your course, I'm not committed to your business.
No, I didn't
That's
say that. You said that. Right.
yeah, have we seen it? Right? That happened. So, that sort of stuff that's so to me, and I get, especially if someone's not, they're kind of new in that world, they might be manipulated by that, right? But I think once you've been around a little bit, that's
You
a
think they
you're
like being
just
that? Hold on. I want to make sure I
no,
understood
no,
you.
no, no. I'm not saying they would like it. I'm just saying it might work,
Okay. All right. Got it. Got it.
which would be a shame, right?
Right, because they've been shamed into it, or they've been manipulated, they've
Or
been guilted into it, any number of ways. And
yeah.
then they always get buyer's remorse. They don't want
When they're manipulated into it, yes,
right.
absolutely.
So
Right.
they've canceled the card, or you have a collection problem, or you have other issues around that. But
Yeah.
when you're working with your clients and you're working with them in an energy level, you're working with them in a blockage. Many people have issues around money. What are some of the
You
typical
think?
issues, you think?
I'm going to go straight up and say everybody's got issues around money. They just got different issues. Billionaires have issues with money. They're just different issues. And right, because money is it's this thing we got to deal with in the world. But
Well,
yeah,
money is just an energy, but
it is.
what I'm talking about is your ideal client.
Mhm.
Is there a disconnect between money and I deserve to have it, or money and I want to ask for it, money and
Yeah, all of
I
that.
I need that money, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I really do work primarily with other healers, right? I definitely also work with coaches and other people, but mostly I call them soulpreneurs, right? So they're kind of here, they have a
I love
business
that. It's a great
that's
term.
really about, there's something that they feel like it's their calling, right, on the planet. And that's the way that they want to make a difference in the world. And they'd love to make a living at it. But the making a living at it is tough. I mean, I'll talk about, I've spoken with many, many, many coaches as well, but I'll speak about healers in particular, because I've personally had well over 10,000 one-to-one sales conversations with energy healers, right? So
That's fun.
I know them well. I have a lot of data. There's a lot of data in my head from all those conversations, right? My best guess would be that 85% of them are not able to are not at this time. I'm not going to say they're not able to, but they're not making a living doing what they would love to be doing, right? They're not able to actually make a living doing it. And I don't think it's all that different for coaches. I don't think the numbers are all that different for coaches. So
I would say that that's the same statistic, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in sales in high tech, or sales in specialty things, or in medical devices or pharmaceuticals. I think that it's always been the Pareto, right? The Pareto rule of, there's only 20% making 80% of the money. But in a way that you're reaching your people, and in a way that communicates their value. Where's the disconnect in the value of what they want to do and what they feel compelled to do, and they're asking for money?
Yeah, I'd be way oversimplifying to say there's only two issues, but I'm going to talk about two issues, right? There's money and their relationship with money, and then there's sales and their relationship with sales. And and then those, of course, are intertwined, because money and sales are very intertwined, right? So when it comes to the money piece, a lot of people, especially a lot of the people that I work with, have there's a lot of self-worth issues. There's a lot of that, mixed, not so great messaging that we've taken on about money, being sort of unspiritual, and it's not, people feeling it's not okay to ask for money, and it's not okay to be paid well. And Lord knows they probably all some vows of poverty from like the 14th century that's come on through. I mean, really, there's a lot of that sort of just straight up blockages of not feeling worthy and not feeling good asking for money.
And let's hold on right there. That is a really important point that you just made, because there are many organizations that have overcome that issue. Think of a minister in the pulpit that asks for money, or the best, money raising organization, Jewish organizations that I've ever seen, because you subscribe to a membership. They understand that it takes the resources to do that. Why is it so hard for a soulpreneur, or even coaches for that matter, understanding that there's a connection between their value of what they have to give and the value and the balance of what they need to receive?
Yeah, they really do get hung up with that, because they suck at receiving. I'm just going to put it straight out there, right? Your average coach, healer, and the people, their go-to in response is to take care of everyone else. Their go-to in life, their go-to response is that they take care of everyone else. They respond to need. They see someone needs something, and they tend to put themselves last, and that's not really serving them or anyone else as well as they think it is, right? So
that's you're describing moms, you're describing women in general, right? Because
yes, and then you have women in general, mom, and then she's a healer or a coach on top of that. It's like a triple whammy around everyone else comes first. Everyone else comes first, right? So there's, and that can come from a lot of different things behind. We really could spend 3 hours just on that, right? It can come from all kinds of things. It comes from that messaging you get when you're growing up. It gets from don't ask for more than what you need. It comes from just take what you get and be happy with it. It comes from, you got to make sure it's your job to make sure everyone else is happy first.
Oh my God, wait a minute. You're making my head hurt with these messages. You're not enough. Money doesn't grow on trees, right? Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that and then the very specifically, and you don't deserve any more than just whatever you get, right? Like, don't ask for more. How many of you have that message, from,
oh my God,
when you were 4 years old and your mom was like, don't ask, just be
ask for more, I
So
say this
there's
to,
all of that, and it's a lot, and it is tied in with a lot of self-worth issues. And then for healers in particular, it's also tied in with there can be a belief, not everyone has this, but that this is your gift. It's a gift from God. It's a gift from source. So how can you charge for it? Which I think is crap. I don't
okay,
believe that at all.
okay,
Right. By that same token, an artist shouldn't be able to charge for what they charge because they have a gift, right? An author
right.
shouldn't charge for the books because they have a gift. But people have that. And I've had people say that, oh, you can't charge for healing. That's wrong. Like it's spiritually or morally
Oh,
wrong.
wait, let me throw another
Have
one.
that.
Let me throw another wrench in the wheel over that one. Gratitude. Don't you come from gratitude? Shouldn't you be grateful for what I just gave you, even though
Mhm.
it's not what you wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So there's so many, mixed messages and convoluted stuff that when I work with people, I teach them actually like the how-to of sales, but I also do that inner work with them. We actually clear away those limiting beliefs and the wounds, and the trauma and the emotional trauma from the past, from childhood, from whatever, all those things that are holding them back, because a lot of it is self-worth issues. A lot of it is stuff where they did not have, they didn't have positive messaging when they were growing up. They were in some cases they really were told they were worthless. I mean, it's hard to imagine that, but we all know that some people are being told that when they're 5 years old. And that's a lot to overcome that and be able to charge anything for anything when that's what you were told when you were 5, right?
Or
So
13. I mean, that was the
or
message I
or
got from
whatever.
13.
Yes.
My God, and so some people overcome it. Some people
Mhm.
super overcome it, like become super overachievers.
Yeah.
And then there are others that just kind of stand in the background and go, I'll take whatever you have left, right?
Yeah, and there is a lot of that. And it's a shame because they have a lot of amazing stuff to offer to the world. So to me, I really like, I'm kind of on a mission for the healers because I feel like the world needs them more than it ever has. And all they want to do is help people, really. And they need to know, they need to be able to make a living doing it. Right. So that's
I
what
always say
I
that,
do.
the healers and this messages don't have enough to give the world, but the world needs everything that they have to give.
It does. That it
It really
absolutely does.
does.
And they do need to be compensated for that in a way so that they can, so that it can, I've spoken with people who don't feel like it's right to charge for healing. So they have to have a job and they spend most of their time doing their job, and then they can do a little healing on the side. And I'm like, well, if you were charging for what you did, you could spend all your time doing the healing, so you would help a lot more people, right? Just getting that. Um,
What are some of your favorite things that you've done with people to help them overcome? I know you've done healathons, you've done all kinds of things that are really magical. But is your magic with the one-on-ones, or is it with the group, or is it just, because you have such a huge, you fill a room with your energy, Anna. And so I want to know, where's the best place where people get all of you that they can receive it?
It's interesting you should ask that. I do a little bit of one. I don't really advertise doing like one-on-one coaching. I occasionally have a client because someone just comes to me and said, "Do you do one-on-one? Can I do that with you?" But from the very beginning of starting this business, it's really all been about group programs for me. Whether I have a year-long mastermind that's just for healers, I have 3-day events, I have workshops, I have all kinds of things. And it's really interesting because one of the things that I had some insight about this lately, because I'm very, very passionate about community and the power of community, and specifically the power of community for healers, because healers uh, often lack community. Most healers feel really isolated. They feel like nobody gets them. They're the weird ones. And so when they can come together with other healers and they're like, oh my God, there's other people like me, it's really powerful for them, right? So I like to
Okay.
create communities of healers, and I like to show healers how to do their healing work, which most of them are mostly trained to do one-on-one work, how they can do that in group settings. And I'm really passionate about this. I actually just created a new like a certification program to help people do group work. And I was like, I just made me look back at my business as like, oh, I've been doing this from the beginning. I didn't even consider doing one-on-one. Like it wasn't even on the radar to like even because, and that's how most coaches start. They start with one-on-one clients. I didn't
Right.
even think about it. I
Well,
just
that's
went
what we're told.
programs.
We're told, that's going to be your
Yep.
best place for you to get a client is to talk to somebody, go one-on-one and
Yeah. And
enroll them and enlist them.
from the very beginning, it was just like, let's do groups. So I have lots of different courses and programs to help healers and others, especially with the sales piece, although I help with the rest of business as well. But I think 100%, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, the single most important skill you need in business is sales, is one-to-one sales.
And I say this all the time, if you don't have sales, you have a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. It's the only part of your business that makes money. And if you can sell, you'll make money. Even if you don't know how to market, you'll get to a point where you have to figure out how to market, right? But you can make money just like working your network and everything without having a good marketing message, without having figured any of that out, if you know how to have one-to-one sales conversations. And this is why I kind of preach to people when they're first getting started, because a lot of people are like, oh, I got to get a website. That's my first thing. It's like, no, you don't even know what to put on you haven't even had a paying client. What are you going to put on a website?
Right. You don't even know what you're going to sell.
Yeah. Right. So it's like sales is primary, marketing is secondary. And then once you've got the sales down, you know how to do it, then marketing actually does become the thing you need to focus most on. But if you try to start in your business with making marketing your primary thing, you won't get anywhere, because until you have sales and actual conversations with people, you won't have any idea what your message is. You won't have any idea and the only way you're going to create a good marketing message is you first have a bunch of sales where you talked with real people and you found out what they wanted. So I just think a lot of people jump in, they're going into it backwards.
Why is it hard for the heart-based coaches to ask that question? Why it's not an invasive question, it's a helpful question, right? How can I help? What are you working with? What do nobody really wants to walk around thinking about, hey, I'm suffering from, low self-esteem, but it shows up in different ways, right? How do you teach them to coach, and how do you coach?
So one of the things that I get a lot of people who are very new, right? And that's great because I want to get them started. I certainly help people who are further along, and I've helped people with very big businesses find all kinds of hidden that they didn't know they could be selling. But I get a lot of people who are very new. And one of the things I find, this is one of my kind of core things that I teach, is I think most people, if they've never been in business before, or they're not from an entrepreneurial mindset, they do not understand the difference between marketing and sales. And that bites them in the butt all the time, that they don't understand the difference. And so I'm going to tell you Ann Hession's definition of marketing and sales and the difference, because you really have to get this, especially when you're first starting out. So what is marketing? Marketing is just getting your message, and it won't be a great message at first, okay? It'll be some message. It's getting your message out in front of the right people in a way that has them go like, oh, that's me you're talking about. Or, oh, I want to find out more about that. In other words, in some way, they raise their hand, right? They respond, whether it's online or they book a free consult with you, or you're talking with them and, they're like, oh, I want to find out more about that. Does that make sense, Linda? Like they're raising their hand in some way. Now, that's marketing. And that's really all marketing is. It's getting people to raise their hand. Then sales is talking to only the people who raised their hand. Okay.
Oh my God.
Only those people. Okay. And finding out
it's
first.
Not everyone. It's the ones that raise their hand.
Just the ones that raise their hand. And as I say that, some of you listening might be like, oh, I've been trying to sell to people who didn't raise their hand yet. Yes. And it didn't go well, did it? Right? So only the people who raise their hand, but still, you don't just like go in to start selling to them. You find out why they raised their hand. And you literally do just ask, right? So if I teach this whole thing, I call it the tell me more trap. Right. So the tell me more trap is somebody raised their hand, right? They responded to your message in some way. And it could have even just been you were at a party and they asked what you did and you said something about what you did and they're like, oh, that's cool. Tell me more about that. But they in some way, they asked you to tell them more. What do most people do then, Linda, when they get asked to tell me more about that?
Oh my God. They either totally dump
Right? Or
and
they freeze.
throw up all
Yeah.
over them with information, right? Overwhelm them, and then the person repels in
Yeah.
horror.
That's the tell me more trap. That's
Don't
the tell.
ever
Yes.
call me again.
Yes. So that's why I call it the tell me more trap, right? Because we've all been caught on it. We've all been caught on, we've all done it. We've all said too much,
The
and we've also
tell me
all been
more
caught in
trap.
it, right?
Yep.
It's the tell me more trap. So the simple thing to do to avoid the tell me more trap is when someone asks you, well, what if I don't, tell me more, say, I would love to, but first let me ask what interests you about it, right? And then you listen, right? What was it? Like, let's say it's a casual setting, like, like you were at a party or something, and they asked you what you did and you said, and they asked you to tell them more. They could be asking you to tell you more, just being polite. They could be, because they're actually interested for themselves and they're thinking, you could help them with something. That's a possibility, but it's only one of many. They could be thinking that what you just said you did sort of sounds like the thing their second cousin's daughter was studying, and they're trying to figure out if the thing you do is the same thing their second cousin's daughter is studying. Now, I could go on, but those three different, or they could be 100% sure what you do isn't for them, but they think their mom might be interested. Okay, so that's just
Or
4
they may be looking
scenarios.
to eliminate you because you're you're a competitor.
Yes, exactly, right? So there's a fifth, right? 5 different things we just came up with like that. Those are 5 completely different conversations. Completely. So you need to first find out why they're asking, right? And literally, I do it just like, I'd love to tell you more, but what got your attention? What interests you about it?
Was
And
it
then
that
you
you
gotta listen, right? Listen to what they say. And if they say, I was thinking that my mom was talking about that, and she was thinking she might want to try that. Oh, great. Tell me about your mom. What's she looking for help with, right? If it's the second cousin in the thing, whatever, like, oh, do you remember anything about it? Right? Like, have that, that's not going to be a sales conversation probably. So you have that conversation.
But it may be a referral, and
it could be,
that's
right?
why it's so important to be listening, have those listening skills of going.
Yeah. I really do probably like, if the only thing you change about what you're doing is you stop falling into the tell me more trap, and you instead just go, yeah, I'd love to tell you more, but what got your attention, and what got you to sign up for a free consultation with me? Just don't even assume that that's a sin. Find out why they raised their hand. If you do that first, that is going to save so many conversations that right now you're probably killing off before they even got started because you fell into the tell me more trap.
Wow.
And that alone will make a huge difference.
Oh my goodness. And so many, even good salespeople fall into that trap of, they've got something that they're selling that somebody raised their hand about, and now they just want to just push. But I have found that heart-centered businesses don't push. They're like, okay.
It'll be one of the, it depends. Okay. Sometimes they'll freeze up. They'll just say like, I know, or I did, but the thing is, they also really love what they do. Coaches and healers, coaches love coaching and transformation. Healers love healing. And so when you have something that you love, the reality is you can geek out about it for a while. Right?
Oh yeah.
And so it is the thing that sometimes they will, and very often they will do the verbal vomit thing of just way too much. Sometimes they'll freeze that too. But here's the thing. I'd love to, but first let me, just whatever, like just saying, if you do the basic thing, like I'm a life coach or I'm an energy healer, like you can even just spit that little piece out, and then they say, tell me more. Whether you're feeling a little frozen or you're ready to give a lecture, either way, if you stop and say, oh, I'd love to, but what got your attention? Now you're in the conversation with them, instead of you being over here like, oh my God, I'm supposed to sell now. What am I supposed to do? What do I think? What am I going to do? It's like, no, find out what they're interested in. You can speak to it. If they tell you what they're interested in, you can speak to that.
You absolutely can. It would be, I saw a video the other day about video messaging or email messaging, because sometimes our message isn't just on that one-to-one, it's in the way that okay, somebody responded, held up their hand, but now we're going to do some follow-up with them. In that same way, that's the same thing that you're talking about, is making that connection, making that way. It would be like going to a networking event and yeah, tell me more. Here's my card. Call me. Right?
Yep.
You're like, no, I don't want your card. No, it's the building rapport with somebody, right?
Mhm. Yep.
It's that building rapport, it's building that connection. That connection's made through conversation, whether it's one way because you sent them an email, or it's something that they saw in your video, or you're having that group conversation and somebody goes, wow, that's really interesting. I need to reach out. What are some of the bigger issues then after somebody's gotten that, boy, somebody's interested? What happens next? Do they follow through? Do they, do they get, do they go too far in the giving information and because of their willingness
I
to help?
mean, that's probably one of the things that people is, even if they don't immediately fall into the tumbling trap, sometimes they still fall into it. It's just like a little later in the conversation. So I think that that's one of the key things that, and that I certainly teach, and I think this is common to any good sales training, is that it's much more about asking questions and listening than it is about talking, right? It just is. First of all, the person who it guides and influences the conversation is the one who's asking the questions, right? So if you're trying, and all the sales conversation is really, it's a process of helping people make a decision. That's what sales is about. I would say it's the process of helping people make a great decision that they'll feel really good about, right? It's not just like pushing them one way or the other, but
Sure.
the purpose of a sales conversation is to make a decision, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
the purpose of it.
and it's our job as good salespeople to guide that question to what it is that they're looking
They
for.
don't
What
even know
problem
what they should
are
be,
we solving?
unless they're very experienced in whatever, they already have a lot of experience in what it is that we're selling, which sometimes is the case. But a lot of the times they're not, they don't even know what they should be asking, right? So if you just let them ask all the questions, they're probably not even asking the questions that are going to serve them to get
That's
answers.
interesting. So how do you teach that? How do you guide that in?
Well, I think it's, you don't let, I mean, I'm not saying if you have a person in front of you who's interested, that you don't answer their questions,
Of
but
course.
you shouldn't let it
No, I'm
be
not going
that
to answer.
they're
You
the
have to
only
be.
one asking questions. You should be asking questions back, and you should be asking most of the questions, so that you and they are getting clear on what is going on with them, and what issue they're facing, and what problem, the impact of that problem, and what solutions they're looking for, and what is going to make sense for them. So how, and just in the way that you ask the questions, that helps them understand what questions they should have been asking, essentially, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, you've probably done this too. Sometimes someone asks a question, and you'll just say, I'll be happy to answer that, but can I tell you the question that's much more important question that you should be asking, whether you buy from me or not? You really need to be asking this, right? About whatever it is, whether you're selling furniture.
No,
Or,
that's so good because,
right?
frequently people are asking questions that they are hiding the reason why they're asking it, right?
Yes, right?
Or they're not even aware of it,
They don't know. And what's the default question? The default question is, what does it cost, right? So
right?
people, and I think most people coming in who don't have any experience in sales, they don't really understand why people ask that. It's the default criteria, right? Like if you're coming
Talk
in,
about that for a second, Tan. I think that's one of the most important things you could say, because people always ask, well, how much is it? So I can eliminate that
right. So
eliminate you as a choice.
right. And you don't want to, especially if you have a higher, I mean, if you sell on price, if that, whatever it is that you sell is your main buying thing is you're the cheapest, then it's great when people ask the price, but that's not what most of us are trying to do. And usually you don't even need a salesperson when that's the case. So if you have especially something that's a bit more of an investment for people, it's always a little like when the first thing they do is ask the price, right? Because
Right.
so what do you do about that? And you don't want to equivocate too much, at least not much, like, you know, so
Right. You
sometimes
don't
I'll
want
say,
you don't want to dance around
you don't want to be like, oh, I'm not
avoid
going to
it.
tell you a price. But at the
I'm not
same
going to tell you.
time, you know, one of the things I might say if I were, or something I might teach one of my, like a coach or an energy healer that was working with me, is if someone just straight up asks, a very honest way to say that is, well, there's more than one way to work with me. It really depends on what it is that you're looking for and how serious the issue is and all that. So do you mind if I ask you a few questions so that I get a better sense of what you need, so that then I could make a recommendation, including a price? Right. Now
Right.
that's a
So answer the
legitimate way.
question and then
Yeah.
ask another question that delves a little deeper.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, I could tell you an hourly rate or whatever, but it's not really about that. It's about what's going to work through. And you can, you know, it's an opportunity to do a little educating. I think it's very important to understand that people ask the price, not necessarily because price is the most important thing to them,
Right.
but because they don't know much about what you're selling a lot of the time. I mean, obviously, sometimes they do, but and so it's the only criteria they know to ask about.
Well, they're
They don't
placing a
know.
value on that criteria. So
Yeah.
how do you walk away? How do you move them away from it back to what the value of your service is versus
Yeah.
the value of the money?
Yeah, exactly. And so you can actually do a little education. It's like, I'm happy to tell you what I charge. I would say the first thing that there's that. And the other thing is I want you to understand price is absolute, like make them right, you know, like price is absolutely one of the things that you should consider in deciding
Absolutely.
whether
It's
to hire
important
me
one
or
to
not.
talk about.
But does it make sense to you that it is not the only thing that you should consider? It's pretty hard for people to say no to that. You know, like, does it make
Right.
sense to you that it's not like that the lowest price isn't necessarily going to be the best move for you? Does that make sense to you? And people say, yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
So let me tell you a couple of things, like when you're talking to me and when you're talking to other people, these are the questions that I think you should ask. Including price is one of them, but it's not the only one. Would that help you to make your decisions if you knew what were the most important things to ask? They're going to
Well,
be like,
yeah.
yeah, hell yeah, I'd like to know what I should be asking. Right. So that's a way to, it's just straight. It's like I feel like it's my responsibility to tell them. If this is my area of expertise and they know nothing about it, I want them to be educated and make a choice that they can feel great about. Despite the fact that I know, I'm just going to throw another little wrench in here, it's not their logical mind that's actually going to make the decision, right? We know, those of us in sales, we know this. We tell ourselves we make buying decisions from a completely conscious and rational place, and it's not
No,
true.
we don't.
Our subconscious, it's all happening, and it's the subconscious that makes the buying decision, and then the conscious mind just comes up with ways to make ourselves feel good about it. And that's just reality.
Yes, yes.
Right?
It's just connecting the heart and the
Yes.
mind, because the heart,
Yes.
if you haven't connected with the heart is never going to be involved
Right.
and you've got to involve that emotion. You've got to involve the feeling of
Yeah.
what you're going to get out of this by working with them.
Absolutely, right? And the great thing about what I was just saying, this is just one thing of sales, but that thing of like educating people about what they should be asking, is that that's doing both. It is speaking to their conscious mind, it's educating them, but it's also speaking to their subconscious to let them know, I care about you. I want to help you look at all the things that you should be looking at, whether I'm going to be the best fit for you or not. It's important to me that you understand what it is you're thinking. So you're speaking to both. You're showing them that you care, you know, and you're also giving them the sort of rational, logical
Well, you're
thing.
building a couple of things. Those building blocks are rapport
Mhm.
and trust and
Mhm.
likability.
And respect.
Nobody
It's
likes
very respectful
somebody
of
that is
them.
going to push them into something, and they're
Yeah.
not going to trust you because you just fooled them into doing something, or they felt like they were manipulated. The brain is calculating these things. Look, we have over 60,000 thoughts a day as a human being.
Oh, way
And
more than that.
75% of them are negative, right? And 95% of them are repetitive. So we're telling ourselves over and over again some pretty crappy messages, right? So
Yeah.
catching ourselves and understanding as a healer, as a coach, as somebody that has something to give, or an employee that has a great idea that wants to tell the boss that this could be done a better way. We want to be heard, we want to be felt. And we also want to know that if we say something, that we can trust the other person with that deepest part of us, right?
Yeah, that they're going to really listen and that they're respecting us and honoring us and that they're, let's get back to, this is perfect come full circle because I know we're about, we need to, and what did I say right from the beginning? It's all about putting the relationship before the transaction. When you're willing to make the person and the relationship more important than the sale, and you develop your skills. I don't mean to, it's like you do have to have the skills and understand, but when you do those two things, you get your chops, you learn the skills and what kinds of questions to ask, and you're coming from a place of this person is more important to me than whether we do the transaction or not. When you do that, you'll get a lot of transactions.
I can't tell you how exciting this is. I think you probably have something for our viewers, and we're going to put that across the screen and let that scroll. But how did they get a hold of you, Ann?
Yeah, agree. If you like the whole tell me more trap, there's really five to six, depends on the circumstances, steps to really handling the tell me more trap well. I gave you the first one, and it's the most important. Stop and say, I'd love to tell you more, but what got your attention and what interests you about it? But if you'd like to get them all, I have a free training for you called Sales Conversation Secrets, Heart-Centered Sales Made Simple, that will really just walk you through that. And it'll make so much sense to you. You'll be like, oh, that's why that doesn't work. And that's why this will work instead.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so go ahead and sign up for that as my gift to you. And that, as y'all know how this works, that will put you on my email list, and then you'll get more stuff from me. And hopefully you'll like it. And
way it works, and we want them to raise
that's how it works. And
that's
then
right.
Raise your hand if you want to find out more.
And thank you so very much for joining us today. I really am very grateful for your time, and especially your heart and your mind. Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Do you like to talk about money? If you do and you'd like to be a guest, contact me at lindak360.com.